Hey there folks, what's this video? And this one is a general notice where I tend to start off the week, but it is Thursday. I talk about the week ahead, look a bit further behind, and think about something on my mind. And, well, as I try to remove the cat hair from my mouth. Oh no, that's an eyelash, because my cat is just sat down here trying to bother me through the video. Hello, Fudge. Yeah, I just want to record this whilst I get ready to record my review for the day of the Dakar. And this is probably going to come out before that, because the Dakar one will probably come out a bit later on, because I haven't had a look at the standings yet, because I've been out all day and saw the new Matrix, and I enjoyed it, but I can see why a lot of people didn't like it, let's say. Then I'm in a funny headspace at the moment, so I think I probably fed into that a little bit. Anyways, this week, well, coming towards the end of this week and into next week, we'll get a song of the week out on the weekend. There'll also be something involving this, because should be tomorrow. I'm changing this out. My G29 is being changed out for something. I mean, my pedals were changed out a year ago because the potentiometers went, which is how I got my load cells, but this is being changed out for something else as well, and I look forward to sharing that. Hopefully I can do that over the course of the weekend at some point. But yeah, elsewhere, thanks again for an awesome 2021. I think the main thing is I want to be able to do stuff that I enjoy doing, and I'm getting to that point now. Which means hopefully, now that everything's up to date with things like RBR, I can do the stuff that I wanted to do over the next week or so. Hopefully. That's the key word there. But yeah, what is on my mind? Well, let's take it across to the sport of NASCAR, actually, and let's talk about Brandon Built Motorsports, and let's go Brandon. So, if nobody's familiar with it, there's a driver in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and well, he drives the 68 he drives? Yes, Brandon Brown. He's a kind of fan favorite driver in a way. He self-funds, runs his own team. He's like a kind of driver-owner situation. When he won at Talladega last year, there were a lot of people who were at the race who were yelling out Joe Biden. And for some reason that rotated over to Let's Go Brandon, which meant that people on the political right wing started to claim it as their own kind of phrase for some kind of anti-Joe Biden thing, because apparently it's, I don't know, apparently it's very funny, but I've been watching a lot of some more news recently, so in particular like the ones about conservatives and comedy, so I don't think it's particularly funny because I don't see the kind of point of it. But recently he announced a sponsor which is called LGBCoin, which is a cryptocurrency based around that. Apparently NASCAR had approved it, apparently they hadn't. And since then NASCAR has said it's not going to be allowed as part of something else where they're looking at potentially distancing themselves from political slogans, which is weird. But I'll go on to that point in a moment. What I wanted to say right now is, when I see LGBCoin, because I'm British and the UK is often known as Turf Island, I think about the transphobic organisations like the LGB Alliance. So I probably wouldn't have approved it for that reason before doing any kind of research and going, actually, this is Brandon Brown. It's like Let's Go Brandon. Yeah, let's probably not. Let's err on the side of caution with this one. Honestly, seeing somebody on Twitter who purports to be the owner of LGBCoin threatening lawsuits with NASCAR, I could see where that company comes from. But it does raise a wider question about political advertising in motorsport. And it's a difficult thing to do. Because on the one hand, if you say no political advertising, it means that you go close to an FIA route, where the FIA didn't allow Santino Ferrucci, who this is funny enough. This is actually his last FIA weekend at the British Grand Prix, where he tried to basically run his teammate off the road, and actually I think hit his teammate when he was summoned to the stewards left. He was also fined for driving to the grid without his glove on and texting while driving in his race car. And that weekend they tried to run a MAGA livery, so the Make America Great Again Donald Trump stuff, but the FIA doesn't allow it. There's a rule in place for it. But the problem is, how do you police that, and how do you police, politics? The FIA brought in a rule in 2020 because Lewis Hamilton wore a shirt saying "Arrest the cops, kill Breonna Taylor," and because he wore it on the podium, they said it was political, and he wasn't allowed to wear it. They brought in this new rule saying that you couldn't do that. You couldn't wear political messaging on the podium unless it was part of prescribed teamwear. So, as a result, if you see Mercedes Black Lives Matter stuff, Lewis Hamilton's allowed to wear that on the podium because it's classed as teamwear. So if, a face mask says BLM on the side of it, as long as your team sanctions it, it's fine. Which is a weird kind of nuance. But they also said they were banning political leaders, which was quite funny because it meant they were meant to ban the likes of Putin and Erdogan being on the podium, which is quite weird because usually the reason why races get held in countries with dubious human rights records or just dubious politics is because the political leaders want to use it as a propaganda tool. I mean, we saw it with Putin for Sochi. We saw it with Erdogan more recently with the WRC because, they all came in 2020 before the Turkish Grand Prix. So he wasn't able to do it at the Turkish Grand Prix. Here in Britain, you're allowed, a member of the government's cabinet. We don't have the Prime Minister do it, but it's usually a member, for as long as I've been following motorsport, where I've been noticing it because we've had Conservatives in power for 12 years, nearly. It's been a Conservative MP who's usually the Minister for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, DCMS as it's known. But over in Wales, Wales Run AGB, it's usually someone who's Labour, because Labour have controlled the Welsh Assembly since it was formed at the end of the 90s? Around the turn of the millennium. So they usually bring their sports secretary to do it. So they did when I went to Wales Run AGB. The question is, where do you define political? And the problem is, different people define it differently. So NASCAR banning the Confederate flag, for example, they'd be like, yeah, it's political. That decision they've made there is political as well, because they want to distance themselves from that past. But at the same time, for a lot of others, saying gay rights is political. NASCAR celebrating Pride is political. NASCAR saying Black Lives Matter would be political. And you've got to go into a situation where it's everything's political or nothing's political. Personally, I believe everything is political. I would go to the extent of saying when you see the Border Force or the Army as advertisements for a NASCAR, which has happened in the past, it's as political as something like a MAGA livery or for any other kind of politician. And this sounds weird because a lot of people usually think that I'm over on some kind of political extreme. I don't actually tend to let my political opinions particularly well known. But it's up to a private company to make these decisions. I can't moderate what a private company does. They have their own politics. But in my opinion, whilst I'm going to call things like, human rights as a bad political thing, and I would much more freely allow those kinds of things than allow advertising for a despot or authoritarian or somebody who I politically disagreed with. At the same time, I believe it's up to those companies to make their decisions. It's why Twitter boots off people from the far right. It's not free speech. It's a private company doing what a private company could do. I exist here on YouTube. I have to abide by their rules and regulations. Unless I want to start my own website from scratch and get into my own kind of web hosting business, which... No. It's more expensive. It's more time consuming. And I don't get the same kind of outreach. Because that's why people are on YouTube. It's weird, isn't it? For me, the whole LGBCoin thing, I can see why it shouldn't have been allowed in the first place. I can see why it should have been allowed. I can see all of that. I think somebody just made a mistake and went and improved it without properly looking into what it was. The problem that NASCAR has is it's trying to play all sides in a way that is look at it itself as a business, and it's always going to upset somebody. Like, the people who think they shouldn't have been on the car are going to be upset because it's already looking like it's going to be on the car. The people who are upset because it's not going to be on the car were going to be upset if they found out it wasn't approved as well. At the same time, politics isn't everything. I don't like when people say, oh, this is too political, because everything's political. Politics comes into the fact that I'm recording on a computer and uploading it to YouTube as a particular site. Politics comes into why you support a certain person the way you do. Or don't support a person the way you do. It's just, what politics means to you is different to what politics means. And I think the more that we stop doing the kind of, oh, we should leave politics out of this, leave politics out of that, the more we actually start to realise we're all political, the better the environment becomes. Because opposing something is as political as proposing something. And that's probably the biggest point here. Let me know your thoughts about this if you have any thoughts in the comment section down below. I mean, for me, it's like, I just don't understand why it got to the point it did. I don't understand why Brandon Brown decided now to cash in on the Let's Go Brandon thing. But it is what it is. Private companies make their decisions, and if they go into a dispute, then we end up where we have now. And as a result, it's the sanctioning body is the private company that ends up getting the precedent. If their rules say, oh, we can do this, that's what their rules say. It's not an answer that a lot of us like. It's not an answer that I'd expect any of us to really like, but it's the way it is. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you around. Bye for now.